Tonight, December the 15th, 1975, we're in the Drexel Hill Junior High School Library. We're celebrating another event in our school's bicentennial. The Upper Darby Sellers Memorial Library Board has agreed to meet here tonight, and there'll be another episode in Upper Darby today. At this time, it's a privilege to introduce the president of the Sellers Library Board, Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. The meeting will now come to order. The first thing on the agenda will be the Secretary's report of the last minutes.
Introduce everybody.
You're supposed to introduce him first.
Oh, you want to do that first?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Thomas J. Brady, Jr. I am president of the Library Board of Directors. I live on 2565 Hillcrest Road in Drexel Hill. I am self-employed and the president of my own company, Thomas J. Brady Company. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Judson Laird.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. My occupation has been public relations for many years. I've been a member of the library board since 1940, and my home is in Rose Valley.
Mrs. Mary M. Tate, our head librarian.
I'm a resident of Drexel Hill, formerly a school teacher, housewife, librarian since 1968. I've been the head librarian at the Upper Darby Library since 1971. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Tate. Mr. Dominic Vinci, trustee.
My address is 607 Wanamaker Road in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. My position on the board is that of trustee, being appointed by the Provident National Bank under the trust estate of the Sellers estate. My occupation is assistant vice president of the Provident National Bank.
Thank you, Mr. Vinci. Mr. Werner.
My address is 293 Green Avenue, Lansdowne. I've been on the board of the Upper Darby Township and Sellers Memorial Library for approximately 17 years. I have recently retired as vice president of Provident National Bank, and I'm at the present time president of Glenolden Saving and Loan Association.
Thank you, Mr. Werner. Mr. Anderson.
My name is Edward L. Anderson, retired. I'm a vice president of the library and been on the board since 1961. Previous to that, I was in personnel relations, but now I'm retired and am active in civic affairs in Upper Darby Township.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Next, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Rose A. Swartley.
I'm Rose Swartley. I live at 614 North Sycamore in Clifton Heights. I'm a corporate and executive secretary at U.S. Electronic Services, and I've only been on the board for 2 years.
Thank you, Mrs. Swartley. I would now like to introduce the Township Library Committee members. First, Mrs. Margaret M. Murdoch, Chairman.
My name is Margaret M. Murdoch. I reside at 248 Chalin Avenue in Drexel Hill. I'm a commissioner, and I represent the 12th Ward of Upper Darby Township. I am chairman of the Library Committee. My occupation is assistant administrator at Fair Acres Geriatric Center.
Thank you, Mrs. Murdoch. Mr. Mario Severa.
My name is Mario J. Severa, Jr. I live at 7247 Bradford Road in Upper Darby Township. My occupation is I'm a self-employed businessman in the township. I'm a commissioner and represent the 4th Ward in Upper Darby Township and a member of the Upper Darby Library Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Severa. Mr. Martin J. Kearns.
Thank you, Tom. My name is Martin Kearns. I live at 127 Houston Road. I've been a member of the Board of Commissioners for about 5 years, and in about 16 days I'll leave the board to assume the post of District Justice for Upper Darby. Thank you.
Thank you. The next thing on our agenda will be the Secretary's report of the last meeting.
Mr. President, if you don't want the minutes read, I'll be glad to move that the reading of the minutes be waived.
I'll second that motion, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Before we vote on it, are there any corrections or additions to be made to these minutes? If not, I'll accept the motion that the motion's already been made, so
Yeah.
I will now ask all those in favor to indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. The next report will be the Treasurer's report.
The Treasurer's report for the month of November indicates receipts totaling $851.10, expenses $15,435.97, leaving a cash balance at the present time of $25,224.25. I may make the comment that the receipts, the majority of the receipts that the library board receives during the year is when taxes come due, which may be in about 2 or 3 months of the year. That's why the receipts are indicated here are comparatively small. That is the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll accept the motion that the Treasurer's report be accepted as submitted.
I'll make such a motion that the Treasurer's report be accepted as submitted.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Those in favor will please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. We will now go into committee reports. The first report will be from the House and Grounds Committee, chaired by Mr. Werner and assisted by Mr. Laird. Mr. Werner.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to report that our new building, being the wing to the library main building, has been completed and is operating in full force at the present time. We are very proud of it. It adds about 7,200 square feet to our existing library. Has been completed, as we know, at a cost of approximately $410,000. In addition to the building, I also report that the carpeting has been completed in the old building on the first floor and the stairway. This was done at a cost of $1,800, and anyone visiting the old building with a new carpet in there, you will have a very pleasant surprise, I'm sure. That is my report for House and Grounds.
Thank you, sir. The next committee report will be the Finance Committee, chaired by Mr. Vinci and assisted by Mr. Werner. Mr. Vinci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have prepared a cash flow that indicates, because of the substantial cost in the addition to our library, will necessitate the library borrowing funds this year. We should pass a resolution to borrow approximately $75,000 to carry us through on our expenses to April of 1976. And I would like very much to make that motion at this time, Mr. Chairman. I make a resolution to borrow $75,000 and encumber the library until such time as we receive the taxes in March or April of 1976.
I will second the motion to adopt that resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any objections? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. Our next committee report will be from the Personnel Committee, which is chaired by Mrs. Rose Swartley and assisted by Mr. Vinci.
Well, I'd like to say that the Personnel Committee met with Mr. Vinci and Mr. Brady and Mrs. Tate on Monday last. That was the 8th. We decided that in view of the fact that there's this great austerity program going on, that we would not grant any across-the-board cost of living increases. We would just go for merit increases. We would also try to keep the merit increases at 6% or under, which I believe is what the township did. We were pretty successful in doing that. In a few instances, you'll see that we did go over that, but that was mainly to compensate for past inadequacies. I passed out papers, I don't think we've got them yet, which will show the employees the amount that they're making now and the amount of the merit increase that they'll be getting. Now, we would like the board to pass on that and approve that.
Before asking for a motion, I think maybe we should add to Mrs. Swartley's comments that this, as I understand it, only included full-time employees. Is that correct?
No, there are some part-time.
Did you have a few part-timers?
Yes,
Okay, I stand corrected. We have a few part-timers who were also given meritorious increases.
However, they were strictly merit.
Well, they all were merit, right?
Yes, and as I said, except in a couple of instances, there they stayed under the 6%.
Okay, that's fine. Are there any comments? If not, I'll accept the motion that this report be accepted as read.
I so move, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. All those in favor will please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. The next report from the committee will be on books and audiovisual material, chaired by Mr. Laird and assisted by Mr. Anderson. Mr. Laird.
Well, Mr. Brady, I have to report that so far this year, we have bought approximately 4,900 books at a cost of about $30,000. Tape cassettes were about 500 in total, and we have 125 periodicals, and we have 29 art reproductions, which are now decorating the library, the wing, and eventually will be put in circulation. People can take them out, not rent them, but take them out just as they would books. Just as a matter of incidental information, you may be interested to know that in the United States there are only 4,400 books published this year. I say only because I'm comparing it with the 4,900. 4,400 books is a lot of books to read. Now, I think that Mrs. Tate does very well with her book budget. Prices of books today are average around $16, but with the gift books and by using paperbacks, we brought our price down, so we average about $6 per book. I think that the librarian deserves a great deal of praise for that. This is the library report in summary for the year, Mr. Brady, and I think that that will be my report.
Thank you very much. The last, and by no means least, committee report will be the Public Relations Committee, headed by Mr. Anderson and assisted by Mrs. Swartley.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to report on the dedication which was held on December 7th, and which we dedicated the new wing in memory of Patrick J. Martin, Jr. Mr. Brady, myself, and Mrs. Tate had a meeting and arranged a program which worked out very satisfactorily, I believe. We sent out 200 invitations for the occasion and received 75 acceptances, and in lieu of the fact that there was in the press that anyone could be invited, we had approximately 150 on hand. And the program was introduced by myself, and the invitation was given by Reverend Frederick L. Keith of the Calvary Presbyterian Church. And as I introduced Mr. Brady, the chairman, who was master of ceremonies for the occasion. He introduced Mr. Dr. Ernest E. Dorschach, librarian of the state of Pennsylvania, Ms. May Hens, coordinator of the Philadelphia Library District Center, Mr. Judson Laird, Upper Darby Library Board of Directors, and Mr. Joseph L. Savucci, president of the Upper Darby Township Board of Commissioners. Each one of them gave a very brief but interesting talk. And after the remarks were made, we had a unveiling of the plaque in memory of Mr. Martin, after which refreshments were served, which were prepared by the staff and served by the staff, and the benediction was made by the Reverend Joseph Bowen of the St. Lawrence Roman Catholic Church. It's my feeling it was a very fine occasion, and we had many fine reports after the affair was over. And I think that everyone can be proud of the library we now have on hand in Upper Darby, because it's in keeping with the kind of library the citizens of Upper Darby should have. That's my report, Mr. Brady.
Thank you, sir. That ends the committee reports. And at this time, I would like to accept a motion that all of these committee reports be accepted as made and also made a part of the minutes.
We'll make such a motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. The first and very important part of new business will be a discussion on our budget for 1976, which was very ably prepared by Mr. Vinci. Mr. Vinci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The budget has been distributed and to you this evening. You will note that it is the largest budget this library has ever had. It totals income of some $294,000, which reflects an increase in the millage from our Upper Darby Township from 2 mills to 2.5 mills. The expenditures were increased where we thought were appropriate, and it shows approximately $53,000 to repay the loans we will have to borrow during the coming weeks. I will entertain and answer any questions any of the board members have with regard to this budget.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the budget for 1976 as submitted.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded that this budget be accepted. If there are no questions on it, I will now ask those in favor to signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Under new business, the next thing we have on the agenda is what we can do or should do in connection with expanding library services in Upper Darby. And the obvious answer, of course, is to look into the possibility of creating some branches and/or storefronts and other things along the same lines. And I would entertain and like at this time to have some discussion on this subject.
Well, you know, the state, as part of my report that I didn't give, the libraries is understaffed. According to the state requires, from what I'm informed, 27 full-time or full-time equivalents. We don't have 27. We have 18 as of last year. Now, there were some additions and some deletions, but Mrs. Tate said that she'll have an updated number for us sometime in January. Now, if we do go in for expansion, that will probably lift the number up somewhat. Now, whether it'll make it meet it or not, I have no idea, but
Rose, is the, or maybe Mrs. Tate can answer this question, I don't know. Is the number that the state require depending on the number of books we have or the size of our library?
I believe it's the
It's
population.
dependent on the population.
It's depending on the population.
And I would like to ask Mrs. Tate if that's a real ticklish thing. Is
Well,
it
there are-
an absolute with them?
There are only 3 categories where we have not met standards for a population of 95,910 people. Number 1 is the staff, which we cannot enlarge until we have more space. We've added some space now and possibly can use another librarian or 2. Then we also needed to add a few more periodicals. And thirdly, the number of volumes is too few for our size population. We should have 143,865 volumes, according to Harrisburg. As of last year, we had 53,600, something in that category. In 75, I believe that we will have close to 75,000, between 65 and 75,000. Then with the plan that Mr. Brady is just now proposing that we discuss a little bit, we hope that we can add all the volumes necessary, if not the number of staff.
Mrs. Tate, may I ask a question? If we open up a branch library, how many volumes will it take to open a branch?
Well, let me tell you this. Our branch library that we do have now in the municipal building has around 10,000 books. That's all they can hold. It's a nice little library. It serves that community well. And I think that if you opened a branch with 10,000 books, it would be a good enough start.
Mrs. Tate, does the bookmobile...
20,000 would be better.
In other words, the minimum would be 10,000
That's right,
and
I would say so.
20,000 would be better. Very good.
That's right.
Mr. Brady? Could I say something in that
Yes,
regard?
indeed, certainly.
You may recall about 2 years ago, I talked to Dr. Martin about the storefront, in particular my area, representing the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Ward. I guess the most populated part of the township. At that time, I thought it would be a great idea to bring books to that area. But I wonder now if the library might not take advantage of the new multi-purpose center that was opened just 2 weeks ago. A center, I think it's at Walnut and 69th Street, right on the corner. It's a new building. It's about as large as this library here, maybe a little bit bigger. And it may very well be that part of that building could contain books for people in that area. And that's a high populated area.
Where is it, Marty?
69th and Walnut Street. It is part of the old Gimbel's, it was Gimbel's Tire Center, and the township owned that property for years. Gimbel's defaulted, and the township took the property back. They've just recently renovated it. It looks like $1 million. So someone from the library might look into the possibility of talking to the director of that project, who happens to be Ted Erickson.
Joe Loper.
And Joe Loper is handling the furnishings there. So you might talk to them about it.
Well, wouldn't that be rather close, though, to the one that's already existing out there right down in the municipal building? In other words, like there would be two there and none out here.
It would be about a half a mile away.
I think, Mr. Kearns, beg your pardon.
There's two bus routes.
You know, if we would open branches, it seems to me that the far corners of our township are so poorly served, they rarely get to the library, and we have so many complaints from people living over in that area. Westbrook Park, for instance, Seacane. The shape of Upper Darby is such that it seems to me like the small communities should have their own library. Whereas in the 69th Street section, we already have a branch.
Yeah, that's not very convenient, Mrs. Tate, to Stonehurst.
No, going up the steps is bad. If we could move out of the township building, but then we would get involved in more expense.
That's right.
The main thing I can say about the municipal branch library is that the rent is free.
Well, this would also
But,
make
This would be free, too.
This would also be.
oh, would it be free?
And transportation would be
Well, I
far
think
better.
one branch in that area would be good, but
Better.
that might be much better space and better to get into. It would be nice to have a
I think it would be
storefront.
handy, and I speak for those that live in the Stonehurst section.
Yeah.
And there's 2 bus lines there, and
It would be a much better location.
there's parking available.
I move,
Are you-
Mr. President, that we have, you appoint someone, have someone look into it so that we can get a further report on it at our next regular meeting.
Okay, well, let me ask Mr. Kearns a question, and possibly Mrs. Tate, too. Are you folks suggesting that we move out of the township building and go
No,
into
not
this
at
other
all,
place?
Tom. This would be in addition to supplement that area, the most populated
No, I
part of the township, I would say.
Well, we'll take it.
I think it bears studying, Marty, and I appreciate your suggestion. I'm inclined at the outset, however, to believe that it is rather too close to the other branch, and I have to agree with Mrs. Tate that we are really in greater need to serve the outlying communities that she just mentioned rather than right there. And yet I believe that I know it's a heavily populated area, and I think your point is well taken. So what we'll have to do is look into each and every angle so we can do what's best for improving library services for all the people of Upper Darby Township.
I think Mr. Kearns is talking about that one area in the Stonehurst area. It's heavily populated, and transportation, of course, is very, very good in that area. This would just be one supplement. There could be others throughout the township.
That's-
But I think it's
that
an
wouldn't
excellent thing.
preclude other ones.
That's right, it certainly would not. But I think it's worth looking into, and I agree with them that this would be an excellent opportunity for those that are in that Stonehurst area to be able to get over to the library.
Is it too far for them to go where the branch is now?
No, they could probably walk to the Gimbel's location
Right.
and they would probably need the bus to get into 69th Street.
Right.
You can't beat the rent, Tom.
No, that's for sure.
No.
Mr. Brady, one
It's worth
point
looking
that
at.
would be very interesting to look at is that that center is going to be used for a senior citizen center.
Right.
And it's getting a lot of talk in the town about it. It's going over very big, and it could be that like a branch in there would occupy some of these
Certainly.
things.
Certainly.
Yeah, that's-
It could be
that's
like a
good.
mini
Excellent
branch
for
to
them.
support and stimulate interest in your total library.
It might be a good place for a
Project.
reading station.
Yes.
Certainly,
Yeah.
If not a regular branch,
it would.
which would be your
Now, would that
periodicals and your
eliminate the
popular books.
bookmobile bill?
Oh,
hope
no,
not.
no,
I
no,
wouldn't want that.
no. You wouldn't want to eliminate the bookmobile.
No. I mean, for
In that area.
area.
No.
No, I don't think
would
so.
want
No, I
the
think you would,
I think it would be excellent for the senior citizens, too, an excellent
Very much
opportunity
so.
for them.
very much so. They will be serving meals there. They will have all kinds of civic activities. They'll have meetings there in the evening. There'll be youth programs. I
It has
think
been
it sounds very-
suggested
it
to
would be
me
a
that we
great
send the
opportunity to
bookmobile down there.
publicize the library.
Yeah, it would.
To answer the question that we can't beat the rent, and this is very true. Unfortunately, our rent is our smallest cost. It's the staffing and the books that
That's right.
really cost us to open
Yeah.
libraries and to open up branches. I speak for the Finance Committee. And of course, we always have to think of cost, too. We
Right.
have to move surely but slowly and still provide the service for the community that we have to move. But I think the suggestion that you just made is fantastic, and I think we ought to take it under consideration and along with
Right.
many others that we're probably going to have as we go along.
What is the name of that building?
Multi-purpose community center. 69th and Walnut.
That's right.
Are there any other ideas about branches or reading stations or so-called storefronts? I would like to see something established in the other direction completely over, for example, where Mrs. Murdoch's area is, and some over in Westbrook Park. And
10 Pines.
the people there don't really, they have a long haul to go to get down to the main library, although the service is good on State Road as far as buses go. I think this would require considerable thought on the part of the board. And rather than appoint a committee right now, and I realize all these people are very busy in their own fields, I think that I'll defer that appointment until I have a chance to discuss it a little bit further with some of the men and or women who feel they can spend the time to do this. It will require some, I think, careful research and some careful thinking.
Is that building occupied now?
It's vacant now, Rose. It was just renovated.
Renovated.
Yeah.
When do they expect to have it completely filled? In
Within
other
a-
words, if we
within
sit
another
around
month.
and waste our time, everything's liable to be taken.
I understand that the decorators are in there now, and they should be finished in another month.
Right.
And then it'll be ready for occupancy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you saying or suggesting then that we should act rather quickly for that particular area?
Yeah, I do,
I mean,
Tom.
location.
I think that the library should let Joe Loper and Mr. Erickson, Dr. Erickson, know that that
We're
we
interested.
may have an interest here, and there may be, before everything is spoken for there, it may be that they're looking for programs and projects like the library.
It's a good enough space.
I think it would be wise to contact them.
That brings me to the next thought then. Mr. Vinci, as chairman of the Finance Committee, is our budget in a position for fast action, we'll say, at a place like this? Can
To
we?
open up a full branch library?
No, this would be more of a reading station, I believe. Is that what you
What
meant?
size space would be available there? How many square feet?
Now, you'll have to inquire of Mr. Loper as to exactly what floor area he has and that sort of thing. I really don't know, and I don't want to give you a figure and mislead you.
How long are we contacting?
Madison,
I have his number.
That's Mr.
Madison
Madison
272.
7,000, the school administration building.
Just ask for Mr. Loper.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Let's see, Jane Weber in there.
Are there any other thoughts?
Bookmobile is very successful in all those places. Yeah, good.
How about where the bookmobile goes? West, do they go to
No, this
Westwood
isn't Upper
Park?
Darby. Clifton Heights isn't Upper Darby.
Yes.
Only the White Park.
We
See
get the
how come
bookmobile
we
covers
got
that
Fernwood, we
territory,
got
would it be?
Tilldale.
Is that sufficient
See Jane over in there.
to put a branch there?
No, I don't think there's.
Mr. Chairman, that's one of the things we're going to be looking into in the next month or so with the completion of our year end in December is the cost of our bookmobile and how many actual people it serves to determine whether it's more advantageous to have a bookmobile or another bookmobile or to have branches. We're going to review this within the next month, and we ought to be able to determine whether this is feasible or not.
I agree. I think, however, as I mentioned a little while ago, that it's a question of dollars and cents. We just can't create this without money, and that's why I'm asking you to determine if you think we can fit this into our budget on fairly short notice in order to get a commitment for this new building that Mr. Kearns talks about. I don't mean this minute, tonight, but I want you to think about it. And we'll get together and we'll see what we can come up with. And then maybe see, I can talk to Joe Loper, whom I, of course, know very well, and ask him what his thinking are, or Ted Erickson, either one of them or both. And then we can maybe have a little short meeting. You and I can go down there and meet with Joe or Ted and come to some conclusion.
I'm wondering if.
In the meantime, go ahead, Rose. I'm sorry.
I was wondering if
make a big issue.
you would actually have to add to the staff by many. If there are people going there, they're not coming here. So could part of the staff, you should look into that, I think, be transferred over for part of the time.
Could I ask a question, Rose,
I'd transfer the whole thing.
regarding the
We wouldn't have
staff?
two there.
Do these people have to be full-time employees for you in order for you to get credit? Couldn't they be
Full-time
seniors?
equivalents.
No, the equivalent.
Hours.
Two part-timers working 4 hours
Okay.
each would be the equivalent, or
That's what
3.5 hours each
Perhaps
would be
you
an
could get-
equivalent to a full-time.
Senior citizens there to volunteer.
Volunteers?
Sure.
That's a good
Yeah,
idea, too.
volunteers don't count.
To the state, maybe not, but
To the
at
state,
the
volunteers
moment.
don't count. Yeah.
Sometimes some
Kinda
are
shame.
better
I'd
work.
like to hear
The
some
thing
comments.
is, if we can't afford anybody new, the state, maybe we ought to ask the state to pay.
Mrs. Tate, are you prepared to make any comments along these lines, or do you want to give us
Well,
some
I
thought
tell
before
you,
you
I've
do it?
always wished that we could change the situation in that section from going up the long steps, flight of steps into the municipal building, and get into a more of a storefront situation where you might have room for more books and a place you could walk in off the street. I think the circulation there is could be improved a lot if we had a little more desirable location in that general area. A lot of people are afraid to go in there. And our librarian there is very good now and very conscientious, but she feels she's done about as much as she can do with the new books that we're giving her more than she used to have.
Yeah.
About improving circulation because of the situation there in the 69th Street area.
Here's where you're proposing, right here.
This would be
That would be
roughly, I
like within a half a mile, wouldn't it?
think it'd be,
You're
no, a
talking
little
about-
longer than that. What would you say, Marty, a
we are
mile,
there.
mile and a half?
Perhaps a mile, yeah.
If there was enough space there, I don't
Right,
see any reason why we couldn't move from one library to the other, maybe, and find it.
You mean-
Well, we
I
don't
don't
know
think they'd have
how
that.
much of the building
That's it.
How much
has been
space?
committed to other activities.
I see, until we
So
find that out,
you're-
it'd be a little,
Well, Mr. Vinci and I will meet with Joe and Ted, or one or both, and see what their feeling is.
In the meantime, we'll develop some cost on what it would be to have a reading room what it would be to staff a full-size branch library, as well as the books that would be required. I think it was Judd that just said a little while ago that our average cost for a book is $17 a piece.
$16.
$16 a piece, 10,000 books. That's a lot of cost.
Well, that's the retail cost. Our book budget was only $6 a piece, but we bought a good many paperbacks and had a good many gift books this year. But no. Now, that's the average price of the retail cost of books.
Well, bear in mind, please, ladies and gentlemen, that there's two very important facets about this. We have to do two things. We have to give better service. We have to increase our staff. And we have to buy books. And I think that is a man-sized order, the way our finances are right now. Unless our friend Mr. Vinci can come up with some real good numbers for us.
Numbers I can come up with. I can't be
Dollars might be a trouble.
Dollars is something else.
Realistic numbers.
Well, maybe this is a good place to introduce the fact that the state is now suggesting to us that we should develop as a system, not as a large main individual library that serves the whole township. They would go along with us on the fact that we do not meet the requirements for state aid for a single library if we would develop as a system, which means a couple of branch libraries and the bookmobile. The standards have not been written yet for such a system. We would help write the standards, as I understand it. And I think they would want to give us some guidance on where we would open these, perhaps to serve the communities that are farthest away, so that we would be giving adequate service all over the township, not just to one little corner. Even our main library is too close to the branch that we have now. Those two, are very, very close.
Well, I'm sure that if we as board members and our good committee knows, when we first contemplated the addition of this wing, the almighty dollar bill sign came into picture, and we, first of all, there was no vacant areas in Drexel Hill to acquire, even if we could, if we had the money. So we felt that we owned the ground where we now are, and that was a logical place, again, being short of money. And everyone knows what the position of the township is as far as the budget goes. So we just can't expect them to come up with any big donation either. They've been just wonderful in helping us with millage, for which we thank our committee and also the entire board. They've been very understanding, and without their help, I'm sure that we wouldn't even have the new wing. But again, if you want to be practical, we have to think, as I keep saying, about the almighty dollar. So I think what we should do is to start this thing going is that Mr. Vinci and I will arrange to meet with, as I indicated, with Joe Loper or Ted Erickson and or both, and see what we can come up with. Maybe, as Marty said, we might be able to get some of the older citizens to help out, although I think Mrs. Tate also said that they wouldn't be very well trained. You'd have to have somebody there that has library experience.
Tom, what they can do.
Well, I know, but this is a little bit technical, Marty. We need, I think you'd need, I'm sure Mrs. Tate can answer that better than I can, but I believe that we would need someone with
Yeah,
knowledge.
a librarian, they can work on
Reference knowledge and things like that, so you know how to guide the people. When they ask for a certain type of a book, you have to know, somebody has to know where to send them, what department, or what section,
Maybe a
rather.
retired librarian or two.
Full-time with two-part.
Yeah, there may very
It's
well
a very
be,
good thought. If we could find a retired librarian that in that area, that would be wonderful.
It's a lot cheaper, isn't it?
Well, we'll pursue that then, and I thank you for your suggestion. Are there any other suggestions along these lines?
I think we should review the map of our township and try to do the best job for our people.
I'm going to have one of these mounted on a cork board so we can put pins in where our bookmobiles are serving, and then maybe we can sort of take it from there to where our population is great and where the need is.
Well, I'm sure it's the consensus of the board that the bookmobile is pretty much indispensable and that we should continue it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's one of the finest bookmobiles in
Yes,
America,
indeed.
tell us.
And indeed it is, and it's something I think we should be proud of. Like everything else, when it gets a little bit older, the cost of maintenance is increasing, but it's still within reason. And I just want to make it clear that I feel, and I'm sure the entire board does, that we need and should continue to have a bookmobile.
Right.
Okay, thank you for the comments on that.
Should be about over.
I think, ladies and gentlemen, this pretty well clears our agenda. There's one pleasant job that I would like to now perform. It is a very small, and I mean very small, token of our appreciation for, and in my case, my personal appreciation to the great help from the library board in accomplishing as much as we have. I have decided that we will extend a gold membership library card to each director, which will be good for their lifetime. I might also add that this same courtesy was extended to all the commissioners, which we sent to them by mail about 10 days ago. And that, again, is a very small token of our sincere appreciation, our deep appreciation for the wonderful help the commissioners have been. So at this time, I would like to present our Vice President, Mr. Anderson, with his card.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Rose Swartley with her card.
Thank you.
Mr. Harry Werner, Harry with your card.
Thank you, Tom.
Would you pass this to Dominic and Judd for me, please?
Sure.
Mr. Vinci and Mr. Laird.
The numbers are in reverse, so don't get...
I was thinking of putting a little note on the back of that please bring the books back on time because they'll find you, but I didn't do that.
I noticed you
Please
left the
bring it
last
back,
sentence
period.
in there that applies on all cards. You could have taken that off.
Well, I didn't want to get I didn't want to get carried away, you know, yeah.
That'll be too
See,
kind.
these will work in our machine. It looks like mine, but they're...
Are there any other new businesses? Is there any other new business to be brought before the board? Well, before I ask for a motion for adjournment, excuse me, go ahead.
I'd like to announce the next meeting will be on January 29th,
Oh, that's right.
Union League of Philadelphia at 6:30 p.m. That's our annual meeting.
Through the courtesy of Mr. Anderson, we've been privileged to have our annual meeting at the Union League for the last number of years now. And, of course, you all read the paper, I guess, not long ago, that now they're going to let Democrats into the league. But I might add a little sidelight here that a year or so ago we had a Democrat on our library committee, and we had a lot of fun with him, telling him that we'd have to make special arrangements to get him in the Union League for this meeting. And he thought we were quite serious about it. I also would like to point out that inasmuch as Marty Kearns is terminating his
That's the way we've always
great job as a commissioner and going into the being a district judge coming January, what is it, 5, I guess, inauguration? 5. Or 5, yeah.
Makes it too long.
And Marty, I would like to personally thank you, not only personally, but on behalf of the entire board. I know what you've done, we all do. And when you were chairman of the Finance Committee, when we were really hurting for extra money, you stepped in and really gave us a lift. And I want you to know that it's very deeply appreciated. And we wish you Godspeed and the best of luck in your new endeavor.
Thank you very much, Tom, and I enjoyed every
Cheers.
minute of our
I'm sure you did.
relationship. Thank you.
Okay? Before asking for a motion for adjournment, I would like it again to to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Kane and Mr. Knaff for their patience with us and for their interest in videotaping this meeting, which we hope sometime in the future will be of interest to the people who are now, shall we say, quite young. When they, in 10 years from now, I believe they're going to be open, Mr. Kane. So I hope that we're all around to hear how funny we sounded and how young we look. And
10 years is all you have to wait.
so I do thank you, gentlemen, for your very kind interest and your help. And now, unless there's any other business, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move you, Mr.
Second motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. The meeting is adjourned.
Teachers.